Where do we begin here? Let's see. So, I haven't recorded a freaking podcast since November. Slacking. But we've been talking, I think for the last week or so. You know, kind of arranging this, and we've talked about you doing this for a handful of months now. And I think it all stemmed from you joining, what was it, an Instagram page? Was it a Facebook page?
It's an Instagram page.
Yeah.
And I follow them. It's called Love What Matters.
And people go on there and share their stories, life's, trials and tribulations and stuff that has allowed them to kind of maybe overcome. But mostly it's like, hey, here's some struggle I've gone through and I've made it out the other side. And hopefully you can get something from it as well. And you had mentioned that you wanted to write your own, because usually they're typed out, pictures and everything.
Yeah, it's a story.
Yeah. And, but you're like, oh, I don't want to write it out. And then I was like, well, I can help you. And you're like, all right, cool. That's awesome. And then we just never got around to it. And then you would keep bringing it up. And we got these microphones. We got this. I'm like, why don't we just talk about it? You love talking. So instead of worrying
my name is Gabby.
Instead of worrying how to write everything down correctly and get that all out, in a perfect way, maybe we do a more imperfect way where maybe there's, some slip ups, or maybe you'll forget some things, but it's more natural.
Yeah, it flows better when I'm able to just talk about it. And it's not even really, it's just my life. Like, that's all that I've really wanted to talk about. But yeah, the Love What Matters is, means a lot to me because I read it all of the time. And a lot of the stories are very, very encouraging. Encouraging because people write about how they overcame tragedy, how they overcame addiction, how they overcame loss and grief, and just any part of your life where it meant so much to one person, because what matters to me isn't as significant to the next person, or vice versa. So these are stories of how people lived through whatever it is that they got through and are able to write a story about it, whether that be months later or years later. They're able to talk about it. And that's all that I really wanted, because if their stories can help me, my story can help somebody else. So that's really my point of wanting to get my story out there. And it's not like my story is the worst story out there, or people are going to be like, oh my God, like, what does she even have to write about or talk about? But like, people really don't know the ins and outs of other people's lives. Like, I don't know what, the person who's sitting next to me at work, what they went through. Yeah, well, we're coworkers, or we could be friends, or friends outside of work. I don't know what happened in their life. So I could be just as surprised as the next person.
Yeah.
So it's just really not only the things that you go through, because you and I could go through the exact same thing, which we have, but we deal with it differently, and how it affects you affects me different. And that's the point of the stories, is how something affects one person affects somebody else differently. And if I could change or help one person, then that's what really matters.
Yeah. And
that's why it's called Love What Matters.
Yeah. And that's like the whole point of this here too. It's like, I don't have anything crazy to bring to the table where I've mastered something or anything like that, but it's like, maybe I can bring somebody on that maybe just drops the right amount of knowledge, or something new that you just never
What does
heard.
he do? Salt guy?
Oh, Salt Bay. Yeah, they'll sprinkle knowledge there, and do with that what you will. That's exactly what this is. So I think we wanted to do at least 3 parts, right? I think we want to do maybe
because I feel like there's significant things that happened in my life when I was a child, when I was a teenager, and then in my 20s. So there were significant things, and I feel like I don't want to, bore anyone with details, and then kind of break it up. But I also want it to feel natural, and people want to listen. So, but I guess, we could make it 3 parts. We could try to fit it all into one. at this point, it's kind of like whatever we feel is best at this point.
Yeah, we just want it to flow. Like, I don't want you to, like, feel like, okay, I got to speak more on this because, we got to fill X amount of time. And so there's no, time signature limit or anything here.
Yeah, and if people want to listen, they want to listen. And it's like,
they can fast forward, they can rewind, they can put it on mute. Yeah.
yeah.
So I know you were kind of thinking, it's like, well, where do I start? And I'm like, well, I was like, just treat it as you just met somebody and you're like, well, hey, this is where I'm from. Oh, really? Cool. What was that like? Well, this is how I grew up. So I guess let's take it back. Like, tell us about your childhood.
Well, I was a late 80s baby.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially grew up in the 90s. Born in Chandler, raised around the area, pretty much stuck to Mesa. So essentially when I think about my childhood, I have fond memories of my childhood. Mm-hmm. I had a great childhood. I mean, there was some things that happened, but overall it was good. Mm-hmm. It wasn't anything that scarred me enough where it would be too hurtful now as an adult. But grew up in Mesa. We did jump around a lot as a kid. My parents, they did lose their job. I went to a couple different elementary schools in Mesa and then moved to kind of the Gilbert area. Mm-hmm. Because my mom, I believe both of them, I'm not quite sure exactly, but I know one, if not both, got laid off from where they worked at the time. So we had to move from all of our friends. And so it was just me and my sister growing up. My sister and I are 11 months apart. So she didn't waste no time. 11 months apart. And from stories that my mom used to tell me, because clearly I was a baby, I don't remember, but my sister was born first. And she pretty much got everything new. All of it was hers. Mm-hmm. And then I came along. My mom, from what I remember her telling me, still lived with her mom, my Nana at the time. Mm-hmm. And there was not a lot of room for all of us.
Yeah.
So my sister got the crib, and not wanting to put me in the crib with my sister, I got to sleep in the stroller.
Yeah.
So my bed was the stroller. I slept in a stroller, according to my mom. That's what she would tell me. So I don't know how true it is. Maybe she was just trying to be, like facetious and trying to make a joke out of everything or whatever she was trying to do. Although I did find it funny, like for real, you couldn't even get me a cot or like a pack and play or like something. Mm-hmm. So did that. And, my mom and my biological father never married. They weren't, from what I understand, weren't even together for the very, very early years of my life. Mm-hmm. And I don't even know if they ever planned on getting married. If it was just convenience for her. Like, my mom and I never really talked about her relationship with my biological dad.
You don't even know how they met?
I don't know how they met.
Yeah.
And I could ask him, but I feel like in order for me to maybe get an honest answer, I would have wanted to hear it from my mom.
Yeah.
Or her perspective of how they met. Mm-hmm. So I never asked how they met. And that kind of is a little sad at this point. Like, clearly I won't be able to get that answer, but I don't know how they met. I don't know when they met, like how old she was, where she was at in her life, where she worked. I didn't know. I don't know any of that. Mm-hmm. Which now I'll make sure that I do my best to find those answers. Or maybe somebody else knows, like one of my tias or something who know the answer to that. I know my mom's best friend growing up would probably know the answer to those questions. That's true. So I'll definitely ask her. But growing up, it was just a lot of back and forth because my biological dad and my mom weren't together. So we spent quite a bit of time going back and forth to his house and staying at my mom's house. Mm-hmm. So we grew up in Mesa. Me and my sister walked to school all the time. We are 11 months apart, but we were a grade apart for a long time. Well, not necessarily a long time, maybe kindergarten, first, second, third. And I'm pretty sure it might've been third or fourth grade where she was held back. For whatever reason, the school and my mom made the decision to hold her back. So ever since third or fourth grade, we've always been in the same grade.
Yeah.
Which is weird because people thought, are you guys twins? Like, what's going on? Like, you guys have the same last name and you're in the same grade. Like, what happened?
And the same unique last name.
Yeah, a very unique last name that people always mispronounce. So not only did they mispronounce my last name, they mispronounced my first name, which is not very difficult, but whatever. I loved the school that I went to as a kid. Met all of the friends that I still know now, being 31 years old. I still know and not necessarily interact on a daily basis, but interact, i.e. follow. And see their lives, their children
on the social media apps and
social media. These are people who I've grown up with, that I had to move away from when we had to move away. But yeah, that's kind of the beginnings of my life. Growing up, my mom used to always joke that I was nothing like her, even as a small child, that I was nothing like her. And that I was adopted. She would make me cry as a kid because she would tell me that I was adopted, and that whenever I would say something or argue with her, she'd be like, that's okay, I'm just going to go call your real mom or something. And it would just be so upsetting to me.
For sure.
Because she would always say that I was adopted, which clearly is not the case. But she would always say that I was adopted. And that brings me back to a picture of my family when we were kids. And all of my cousins are in the picture. All of my cousins. My youngest cousin, because she wasn't born at the time, but the second to youngest, Adri, she was a baby, like in a car seat, from what I remember of this photo. But I wasn't in the picture. And the story is that I was asleep.
Yeah.
But my mom and my family members and my tias would always tell me it's because you weren't adopted yet.
Oh, no.
So it always comes back to, oh, you were adopted. Gabby, like, this isn't your real family and stuff. So that photo makes me laugh every time I see it because I'm not in it.
Yeah.
And according to my mom, I was sleeping in the bed, but they make jokes about it.
Conspiracy theories.
Right? Is that
Yeah.
The stork hadn't brought me yet. But everyone else was making an appearance in that picture. So it's quite hilarious to see the picture now, knowing how my mom not treated me. It wasn't bad. It's just jokes, but how she played that card a lot. So
yeah. That is funny. Yeah. 'Cause you have a physical appearance that's definitely different than your immediate family, your cousins. They're all relatively short in stature, a little bit darker skin, and yeah, you took after your biological father, a little bit taller, lankier, more fair skin. So
it's the Spanish side.
Yeah, for sure, the Spanish side that we got in us. That's hilarious. So I guess we can get into maybe how you are maybe estranged. You were estranged from your biological father, kind of what led to all of that.
That's like, it happened, being a child and then also kind of into my teen years. So he was always around physically and financially. Well, I take that back. He was around financially, but not always around physically. Yeah. He would be around when we needed money. He always gave my mom money to buy us whatever it was that we needed, clothes, school supplies, whatever. He gave her what we needed. But when we needed him most, there were times when he wasn't there. So my mom tried her best to not talk negatively about him because, that's, you don't want to do that as parents. And now being a parent, that's the last thing you want to do, is to create this story in your child's brain about the trueness of the other parent. Yeah. So she did her best to kind of shield us from who he was. And to be honest with you, he wasn't that great of a person back then. Drugs and alcohol consumed his life. So he wasn't as involved with us as he should have been. And from what I can recall, at least in stories, because again, I don't know, but my mom, when she was pregnant with my sister, she had told me that she was 8-9 months pregnant, working in the fields and like picking whatever it was. And I don't know how true this is, but I remember her telling me. And when she went into labor, she drove herself, and he showed up. Ruben showed up, and he was high.
Oh man.
I mean, everybody knows who my biological dad is, so it's fine. And he was high because what he did was, what's the word when you, speedballs.
Speedballs, yeah.
So my mom, I remember the story, my mom telling me that they didn't have any spoons in the house because he ruined them all.
Yeah.
So he's on drugs. My mom is going through labor by herself, and he shows up and he can't even contribute. Like, there's no point in being there. He can't even contribute. So my sister is born, and everything is fine. And I don't know if he got his act together after my sister was born. Like, oh, I got a baby now. Because when women get pregnant, they become a mom instantly. Mm-hmm. They get themselves together. They get healthy. They take vitamins. They worry about themselves because they're worried about their baby.
Yeah.
Guys, they don't see it that way. They don't become a dad until they're holding their baby in their arms. Mm-hmm. So maybe it was the same for him. So he could potentially have gotten, his shit together after my sister was born, because my mom conceived me, not 3 months later, because her and I are 11 months apart.
Yeah.
And from what I understand, he was kind of clean when I was conceived.
Yeah.
Which maybe was the reason why she even decided to have a second child. Mm-hmm. Because I know that my mom was pregnant prior to my sister.
Yeah.
And she lost that child. And my mom had always said that she only wanted 2 kids. So she lost the first kid, had my sister, and then decided to have a second, which was me. And then that was it for her. So growing up, they didn't have a good relationship, which means we didn't have a good relationship with him. Mm-hmm. He was in and out all the time, in and out of jail. I remember as a kid going to see him with his mom, would take us to go see him in the several different prisons around Arizona that he was in. We would go, having to wait to see him. But he had always been a part of my life. Like, he was always there. Yeah. And we just never really talked after kind of things went south, I guess. My stepdad, who is my dad, he raised me since I've been 2 years old. Him and my mom got together when we were very, very young, 2 and 3, from my understanding. Mm-hmm. And the story is told that my biological dad and my mom were together and living together, and my stepdad comes along and needed a place to stay. I don't know how he knew my biological dad. Yeah. But he needed a place to stay. And so he stayed at the house. And, while my biological dad is at work, my mom and my stepdad are at the house, and one thing leads to another, and they end up together. Mm-hmm. And what is it? 29 years later, they were still together. Yeah. So my mom made the decision to be with my stepdad and not my biological dad, which caused so many issues, mm-hmm. which led to my, separation from my biological father, the disconnect, the lack of me wanting him in my life for quite a number of years. Yeah. So it was really that initially led to the separation between the two of them. Is my stepdad came into the picture. Yeah. And I would like to believe that he saved my mom from whatever shit that that my biological dad was getting into, could have gotten into. Mm-hmm. He saved her, and they truly loved each other. Like my stepdad and my mom, he was there for her until the very, very end. Mm-hmm. So, and that's all. That's he still is. Yeah, yeah. So that's what initially caused the rift.
Yeah, rift
between us.
Between you and your biological dad.
Yes.
Yeah. So I know you had mentioned that you grew up a little bit around drugs in the home. Well, obviously your biological dad was, shooting up. You guys didn't have any spoons. Did you witness any drug use other than just like moving the paraphernalia?
I never physically actually saw drug use.
Yeah.
I know that my dad, and when I say my dad moving forward, I'm talking about my stepdad.
Yeah.
I know that there were occasions where I knew that he was on something, not just alcohol. Mm-hmm. And I did witness, we lived in an apartment complex in Mesa, like a mile and a half from our school. Mm-hmm. And it was across the street from this little convenience store that we would go buy like 50-cent sodas at, and like hot pickles from the jar and stuff, As a kid, we would walk across the street, but we lived in an apartment complex and we lived farther down. Like you'd have to go through the gate and drive a little bit to get to our unit. Mm-hmm. And we were like the end. So I did on occasion see, the weighing and the bagging. We had constant knocks on our door late at night when people were trying to buy. And it could have been strangers. It could have been, contact this person, they know, or it could have been, my dad's family who was involved in that just as much as he was, mm-hmm. So it was just constant drinking. My mom drank, but not like, she would like pour, excess. Yeah, she would pour herself a drink and then probably not even finish it. My mom wasn't a drinker, mm-hmm. and my mom didn't do drugs either. Like she was really, really, I don't want to say innocent, but innocent, if that makes sense. Like she partook in the exchange of the quote unquote paraphernalia, but she never did anything.
Yeah, it was an ends. What's it? A means to an end to support, two young kids. And
I mean, they had jobs. Like I remember living in that apartment complex and we had a bunch of friends, mm-hmm. and we would go out and play, it was a good childhood. Like we had fun, but then there was also the times where I saw that, and I don't know if my sister remembers this, but we, at one point from what I can recall, having to be secured in the bathroom or the closet because, somebody threatened to shoot up our house because of whatever deal that went on, and there was a story that my cousin reminded me of that I apparently blocked out because it was such a traumatic event for me as a child, which is why I'm like, I don't know that I can recall a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But apparently my sister and I were in a convenience store and it was robbed. And the manager took her and I in the back and covered us with his body to protect us.
Yeah.
And we were probably like 6 or 7, 8. Like, I truly, when my cousin brought that up, I truly did not remember. Mm-hmm. And partly was probably because I was blocking it out.
Yeah.
Because it was so traumatic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, I don't even remember. Like, but she was like, yeah, how do you not remember? And it's like, and
your sister didn't remember either?
I don't know if I talked to her about it. So I'd have to bring it up to see if she did remember, but my cousin was the one who brought it up. Like, yeah, this happened. And I'm like, I don't even remember. So, it's like, it's just the little things that are so traumatic that you just block out, that it takes a lot of coaxing to get it out. Like, mm-hmm. Maybe if you get hypnotized or, whatever, that you just you just kind of dig super, super deep and you just get it all out. So I witnessed that, but overall it was good. My mom did very well in the shielding, in protecting us and making sure that we had what we needed. We were happy, we were healthy, and it was good. Like, it was good. Like, I remember good memories. Like, my dad had this car. We called it the Green Moco. And it was the cars that have the bed, but it's also a car. You know what I mean? Like, Do you remember?
Like a Camino, El Camino?
So it had like the front, you know, like where you could sit in there, and then
Yeah.
it also had like a bed, but it was like not a truck, it was like a car.
Yeah, it's El Camino, I'm pretty sure.
I don't know what it was. I was a kid. And so like I remember driving in there, and my dad driving, my sister, because there's only like it's only one seat, like there's no back seat or nothing. So my dad driving, my sister in the center, my mom in the passenger seat, and where else is there room for me except on the floorboard next to her feet? So I sat by her feet, like when we would go somewhere, like because there was no room for me to sit, you know. And that just goes back to me sleeping in the freaking stroller.
Yeah,
like I got the shitty stick. Like I'm over here like struggling, you know, like you know, I was a smaller one, so
Yeah.
I was able to fit. But yeah, like just pictures of seeing us growing up, like we were typical 90s, had the gel shoes, and my mom, we were so close together in age that she dressed us the same, did our hair the same, and it was so annoying because people thought we were twins.
Yeah.
And we weren't.
But now you look back and you think it was cute?
Now I look back and I'm like, oh, we were kind of cute. Like we were cute when we were dressed up the same, because we were the same kind of up until probably about like 8 or 9.
Yeah.
Is when my sister's medical condition started to present itself. So she struggled a lot of it in life with her medical condition.
Yeah.
So it started to present itself, which ended up changing physically our likeness to each other. So that changed, and so it was easy to be like, okay, this one's Ruby, this one's Gabby. Like we know each other. You guys are fine. So, but we did everything together as kids, like, you know, learned together, and we were there for each other. So, but yeah, as far as that, we did experience a lot of that, and firsthand, at least for me. Because I was mentioning before, I'm not really sure what age I was. But there was a significant experience in my life with my sister, where there was a night where we were supposed to be spending with our biological father, and he came to pick us up.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure what was going on in my house, but I do know that my dad, again, I mean my stepdad, my dad, was already drunk. Who knows if he was high on whatever it was that he was high on. Started a confrontation with my biological father. This is a well-known story, at least within my family, but started a confrontation with him. They got into a fight, whatever. And I don't know if it came down to like blows, like if anybody laid any hands on each other. I know that they were in each other's face and cussing at each other.
Yeah.
And being drunk and high, clearly he didn't know what he was saying, but he ended up basically saying, in no other words, because again, it was so long ago, like, take these little bitches and get out. Like, called me and my sister little bitches, and basically wanted us out.
Yeah.
So he took us, my biological dad took us. We said goodnight to my mom, kissed her, we left. And we were driving, and I hope that I'm not mixing two stories together, because it all kind of jumbles together at some point, because there was that event and then there was another event. So I'm not sure, and my sister can clarify if this was the same night.
Yeah.
But I know that there was that event.
Well, because so in your mind, you leave the home with your biological father, and then you guys have an incident in the car.
Correct. And so I don't know if it was the same night, because I remember my mom kind of forcing us into the room or something to call the police, and they it's all kind of blurry.
Yeah.
At this point, but I know that we had that significant event, and of course, now with being 31 years old, my dad is like, it's something that you get over. He's drunk and high. I'm over it. It's not something that I'm going to hold against him being so young or whatever.
Yeah.
But whether or not that leads into this incident, I'm not sure. 'Cause again, it all kind of just is like linear in my brain. Like it's all kind of just, it's just there, just memories and thoughts. But there was another incident, whether it was the same night or not, where we're driving with Ruben, and I'm in the front seat. I don't know what kind of car it was. I'm in the front seat. My sister's in the back seat, and we're driving. And he was drinking, literally had a beer in the cup holder while he's driving with us.
What are cup holders for?
But beers. He was drinking. So not only do you get a driving under the influence,
Yeah,
you're
for just
driving
having it.
while intoxicated. Like you're literally. So I remember, so we're in Mesa, we're coming from our apartment at the time or whatever. And we had turned down. So where we lived was close to where I ended up going to high school at. Mm-hmm. So I went to Westwood High School. So we are driving down, I don't know. It's Brown. It ends up turning into maybe 8th. I'm not sure. But it when you make the right there, it turns into Rio Salado. That was 8th Street. It was 8th Street, but then when we lived on 8th, it turned into Rio Salado.
Yep.
So I'm not sure. So it was 8th at the time. So we had made that right turn, and we're kids, and he made that right, and boop boop, we get lit up, and he pulls over, and he gets out. Like they tell him to get out, mm-hmm. and so we're freaking out. We're like, we don't know what to do. Like mm-hmm. he's about to go to jail right now because he's probably got like warrants or unpaid tickets or like who knows what he's got. So
and these are thoughts going through your mind, and you're how old?
And to be honest with you, I don't remember exactly how old, but we were definitely
28.
We were definitely less than 12.
Yeah. I thinking you were like 11.
Between 8 and 12.
Yeah.
Both of us. And we're sitting there, and when we first got lit up, he put the beer that he was drinking next to my feet, like in the front seat, put it right next to my feet. Mm-hmm. And earlier in the day, I guess he had eaten at Burger King or McDonald's or whatever it was. So there was a brown bag in front of my feet, like underneath. Mm-hmm. So the cop comes up, and as the cop's coming up to the car, I take the beer and I put it in the bag. Ruben, he's still in the car. The cop hadn't come up yet, but they come up, and I put the beer in the bag. And now I'm just like, I contributed, I added to not to what happened to him, but I'm trying to think of how to properly phrase this. I did something to allow him for it to be less.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Lessened charges. Lessen the charges.
Yes. Which I didn't know at the time. Like now I'm like, fuck, I could have just left it there and then he would have just got in trouble more. And but I'm like, this is my dad, and I need to do what I need to do. So before they even walked up, I put the beer in the bag, and then the officer walks up. 2 officers, both sides, walk up because there's kids in the car. Yeah. And it's kind of late, probably like 8 or 9 o'clock because it's dark. I recall it being dark. Mm-hmm. Pull up, both officers on both sides of us. He has his flashlight, and the first place he shines his flashlight on, right in the area of where the beer was.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you lucky son of a bitch that I did that for you, because you would have been immediately arrested and taken. You have children under 15 in the car, and you're intoxicated already, and you're still drinking. So they take him out, they talk to him, and I remember him saying, those are my daughters. Be nice to, or be gentle, like approach them, whatever, because we're all upset, like crying and stuff like that. And so they come and they talk to us. I remember the officer coming up on the right side of me and talking to us like, oh, well, like, do you know what happened? Like, do you know how much you had to drink? Or like, where are you guys going? Where are you coming from? Like all these questions. And they were like, well, they're going to take him in. They were like, you're being arrested. So either you have their mom come and get them, or somebody has to come get them, because he also didn't want the car to get towed because he's drinking while intoxicated and he has kids in the car. So he ended up calling his mom, and his mom came to the scene and ended up taking us like with her. I think she actually maybe ended up taking us back to my mom.
Yeah.
Rather than to her house. But that's a story that my sister and I talk about, because it's like, I kind of saved his ass a little bit there, like, because he could have been charged with a lot. Yeah. Like, Yeah.
Oh yeah, heck yeah.
Yeah.
Shit.
So there
And
was,
even back then when they were more lenient, it's still a lot.
yeah. So I know that there was some significant moments, like that.
That just had to test you and put you in a situation that most kids shouldn't be in.
For sure.
You know, a lot of people can go through it, but it's still something that, you know, you would try your best to not put your kids in those situations, you know, where they're having to hide beer from cops for you.
Which is, I
For
think my
your
mom did
mess-
a good job, because at one point we were kind of forced to go with him. Like, you need to go, you need to go. And then at one point it was almost like, okay, well, you don't have to go if you don't want to. Okay. She never once tried to make us think anything different than what we were already thinking.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of person that's like, I know, like, I'm not okay with it. And so you can't get me to go, or whatever the situation was. So at one point she was okay with us not going to his house anymore.
Yeah.
Or spending time with him, or going to visit him when he was in jail, because she knew how I felt about him.
Mm-hmm.
And she was okay with it because I knew the truth. And I knew that at any given time, as a child, at any given time, who knows if he's going to be there or not, because it could be in jail. He could be MIA.
Yeah, you knew.
Who knows?
You came to realize that you just couldn't rely on him for any emotional support of any sort. Like you mentioned that your stepdad was the one that would take you to doctor's appointments, or, went to the store and bought you tampons, was there for your first period, like that type of stuff. Like, so that's why you call him dad. He was there for all your, milestones in your life as you become, an adult and a woman.
Yeah, he was there. My dad has been there for me, like I said, since I was 2. So there's a picture of us at my dad's surprise birthday party, and you are standing next to me. I think I'm holding Micah and he's holding Avery. My dad's holding Avery. And looking back at the picture, my dad was in my life when I was smaller than Micah at that point. Or I think Micah was right around 2.
Yeah, he was about 2.
Or maybe he was 1.5 and Avery was 2.5. Something like that. But at the time, he was in my life when I was that young. And it just like brings me, like, I'm like in awe, right? Like, you wanted to be with somebody who already had 2 kids when you already had a kid of your own. Because I have a stepbrother. He's older. So he already had a kid of his own. And then you're dating someone with 2 small kids. And then you stuck around. Like, he stayed and he did.
And they didn't have any kids
No.
together,
No.
Yeah.
They did not have any kids together. I don't even know if they ever tried. If they ever talked about wanting to have kids together. I don't know, because they were still relatively young when they got together. So because, I think my mom was 25, 26, maybe 26, 27 when she had us.
Yeah.
And they got together before she was 30.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Plenty of time.
I don't know if they ever talked about it, but I know from what my mom's told me, she didn't want more than 2. But he has been around. He's done more for me than I could ever have asked of a person who's not biologically related to me.
Yeah.
And I think it's hilarious when we're out together and people say that we look alike because he's not my biological dad, but he's my dad. Like, I would go to the ends of the earth to make sure that he's happy. And speaking of him, I just asked him, I don't know if you remember, but I'm 31.
Yeah.
And I asked my stepdad if he would want to adopt me.
Yeah, I do remember that.
So he's going to officially be my dad
Yeah.
when he adopts me as a 31-year-old.
Then you guys can go out for a Happy Meal.
And then I'll be like, yeah, we a Happy Meal.
He'll
And
push you on a swing, you go down the slide. Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be
So
good.
he's been a supporter throughout every trial and tribulation of my life. He's been there. When he got clean, he he was good. There was obviously troubled times.
Yeah.
And there was still troubled times after, but for the most part, he was present when he needed to be. And it was the most important because he was there.
Yeah, he was there when it counted. And that's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that story of you getting pulled over by the cops is definitely puts you in that like sub 11, 12, because I do recall the story of you talking about when you really just like lost pretty much all hope for your biological dad when I think it was a Christmas where you guys didn't get anything. So I knew, you guys growing up didn't have much. So you mentioned that, a lot of times the only present you got at Christmas was from what were those trees that people buy for others?
Yeah, so that was one Christmas. They still have them now, and people do them.
Yeah.
And so they're the angel trees.
Mm-hmm.
They put them up in like Salvation Armies, or sometimes I've seen them in like Walmarts and stuff, where you just go pick an ornament, but it's a paper off of a tree, and it has a name of a child, the age of a child, and the size that they wear, and a toy or two that they like. Mm-hmm. And if you're generous enough, you go out and you buy whatever it is that kid wants. You wrap it up or do whatever, and you drop it off, and then Christmas morning that kid wakes up to whatever it was that they asked. So I probably couldn't count how many angel trees we were on as kids. Mm-hmm. We weren't poor by any means. We were definitely the definition of probably, I want to say middle class, but I also want to be like how I grew up. I would want to say kind of the lower end of middle class.
Yeah, for sure. There's a range.
So we always had food to eat. We always had clothes on our back. We always had school supplies. We always had what we needed. We never necessarily always had the extras. We never grew up with like pets. We never had like animals that we had when we were city. So we lived in like apartments and stuff like that. So we never had pets. But there was one Christmas that I can recall where the only gift that I had received was a gift from my biological dad. And it wasn't even from him. It was because he enrolled himself in a program in prison to allow prison staff or, whoever volunteers or whatever it might be to give the prisoners' children gifts for Christmas. And so he signed us up and he got selected or whatever. I don't know what the process was, but for whatever reason, he was on the list. Mm-hmm. And my sister and I had already wrote down kind of what we wanted. And I asked for a CD Walkman. So I got a CD Walkman, like the big old CD Walkmans that you can't even fit in your pocket. Like I got a CD Walkman and that was the only thing I got. And so
you have anything to play in there?
So I remember getting the Ramon Ayala CD and listening to this song on repeat over and over and over and crying because I was sad because at that point my biological dad and I were still, fairly connected. So I missed him. He's in prison. I missed him. And it was a very kind of sad Christmas. Do you remember when, because did the Diamondbacks win a World Series?
97, 98.
Because it might have been that same year.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching. When is the World Series?
Was it 98? No, maybe it was 2001.
I think it was 2001.
I think that they became a team in like 97, 98. 2001, yeah.
When is the World Series?
It's usually in like November.
Because I think I remember watching that and then it being Christmas. Yeah. So I'm pretty sure it was right around 2001, if that's when the Diamondbacks won the World Series.
I think it was 2001, yeah.
Because I think I connected those two events in my memory. But I remember listening to this one song on repeat because that was his favorite song. Mm-hmm. And I listened to it and I cried. And now that song reminds me of my mom too because, just love Spanish music. Yeah. But those are only gift. And yeah, while we're kids, we complain and we're like, what the fuck? Like, why didn't we get anything? And that turns into why I am the way that I am right now with my own kids. There's no fucking Santa in this house.
Yeah.
There's no Santa in this house because when I was how old would I have been? 12?
Yeah.
When I was 12, Santa didn't come to my house. Mm-hmm. Santa didn't come to my house. So it's unfair that I went to school that I went to school in the same goddamn shoes that I left school in. I didn't have brand new clothes. I didn't have new shoes. I didn't have new gadgets. I didn't have anything. When I went to the school that I went to at the time was primarily an all white school. So you know damn well them kids are coming in with new everything. And we ain't got shit. We didn't have shit. We had the one thing. And so I think it's unfair to say Santa brought you this, Santa brought you that.
Because you were such a good kid this year.
Right? Yeah, because you were such a good kid or whatever it was that you did that was so good. But Santa didn't go to your neighbor's house. Santa didn't go to your friend's house. And then, you know, little Sarah over here is getting everything that she ever asked for. A new tablet, a new everything, new shoes, new clothes, new. And then, you know, little, I don't know, Gabby over here gets one gift from her biological dad's prison program. Like, that's what I got.
Yeah.
So when my kids open gifts on birthdays and Christmases, I bought that shit. Yeah. I worked hard for that. That came from my pocket. Not no fat ass white man with a beard coming down the no chimney that we have. It's not that. It's not that. There's no, and it almost is like people had said to me before that I'm like ruining their childhood. No. Because there is no, you know, because I'm saying that there is no Santa.
No magic. And no, they still talk about Santa and they're like, Santa lives in the North Pole. They still talk about that, but we're teaching the kids that they have like real responsibility by their actions and that the stuff that happens in this world is done by somebody doing the right thing. So there's no like no control, like, you know, do this or, you know, you're not going to get a present or Santa's not going to bring you this. It's like a little bit of like that control or like that we hold over us. Like, again, oh, do this or you're not going to get into heaven, you know, or this and that. It's like, that's not right.
But it's also like you work hard for what you have. I worked hard for what I have in life. Like anything. Whatever I can give my children, I've worked hard for. When I can go and buy them an extra toy, I worked hard for that. And so I don't want some fictional character to take credit for what I've done. And my kids know that. Like, that's from mom and dad, and we worked hard, so you take care of it. Or that's from Nana and Tata, they worked hard, or Tia, or whoever got you this gift, because Nana and Tata ain't giving these kids a gift that says this is from Santa. Fuck that. They're gonna be like, you know that I bought that for you, so why can't I do that? You know, like that's from me. So it's that moment in life kind of formed how I knew I was gonna be with my own children when I eventually had children. Like, there ain't no fucking Santa in my house. There isn't no Easter bunny. No, like,
Tooth Fairy.
Yeah, Tooth Fairy.
Tooth Fairy's getting a little rich these days, I hear.
Right? She's giving like $20 bills and stuff. Like, ain't nobody got that kind of cash on them. Like, I'm the creeper going in your room and taking those teeth from underneath your pillow.
You gonna bag them up too?
Like, I'm the one making them eggs for Easter and hiding them. Like, there ain't no Easter bunny.
Is that the idea that the Easter bunny hides the eggs?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I've never really got the concept of like the whole Easter bunny. Like, what does the
Easter and like religion though, you mean?
Like, but what is the point of an Easter bunny?
Most of these holidays that we as Americans and in the Western world acknowledge are all pagan religion ceremonies, and it usually has to do with like changing the seasons, fucking equinox and all these big words that I really don't know about. But anyways, it's in the spring because that's when everything flourishes back from, you know, when it died in the winter. And, you know, bunnies are very fertilis, is that a word?
Doesn't sound like
fertile
one.
Like, you know, they fuck, you know. You want to hear a joke?
Go.
Why can't you hear bunnies having sex?
Why?
Because they got cotton balls.
Oh my Lord.
Anyways, but no, they have a lot of offspring regularly, and so the eggs and bunnies, all that symbolize,
the growing,
the world coming back to life and everything.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So that's why it is. But, so religion can kind of form its way into our regular society. They're like, oh, well, this is when Jesus resurrected.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. Isn't that because, I'm not religious.
No.
I haven't been in a very long time. So it's like, I know that all of these things like are, Christmas is Jesus's birthday and, like whatever it is that has been said to me growing up,
Mm-hmm.
So being a kid, we went to church. My mom was raised Catholic. She did the whole communion thing and, all of that stuff. There's a picture of her wearing this white dress and she did all of that growing up. And then as an adult, she decided, probably even before that, who knows, but we were going to a non-denominational Christian church. We did that like my whole childhood. My cousins came along, we had fun. We did, concerts and, plays and like just kind of, we were active participants in the church growing up. My mom would always be the one to make food and it was fun. Like I remember having all my cousins in the car. Well, not all of them, but most of them in the car with the windows down and driving to church, go on like Wednesday night or, obviously Sunday morning. And like, just, that was a fun place for us. Like we had a lot of fun as early teenagers going to church.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
I was in church.
We had fun. And like we were active. We went, like we did things. We helped with the little, the smaller kids and stuff like that. And it's where I met Roger. The very first time I met Roger was at church. And we were like 11 or 12 years old. So it's like to know this person since I was that young, like obviously not a kid, but and so we did have a lot of fun, and she's been going to the same church since we were that young. So like we knew the pastors and like the same people, and they got to watch us grow up, and we got to have the same consistency with the people that were around us.
Which is huge for kids.
Which was the people that were around us, the pastors, the youth pastors at the time, and everyone else that was involved. But eventually, I got to the point where I'm asking questions because I don't necessarily agree or I don't understand this specific concept, and no one was ever really able to explain it. So through my own research, even just talking to random people when you're pumping gas and they come talk to you about Jesus or the knocks on the door, and they come talk to you. It's like, well, can you explain this? And so I kind of stepped back from religion because I don't necessarily agree or believe, essentially, I guess you could say, in whatever it is that was being instilled in me as a kid. That when you die, you're going to go to heaven and there's pearly white gates and it's going to open and there's just going to be all of these, wonderful things up there. And while I don't discount everyone's feelings who believe that, fantastic. Like, I'm happy for you. You are able to find comfort in that. And I find comfort in, like, maybe there is nothing. Maybe there is. Who knows? I don't know. Like, I'm not one to sit back and dwell, but what did help me is that my mom was religious. So in her last moments, I was able to find comfort in knowing that she was comfortable.
Yeah.
And that she was finally, after 20 plus years, she was finally able to see her God, meet him and see her parents and stuff. So in that one little sliver of time, I felt comfort in religion to know that she was comfortable.
Yeah.
So, but after that, it's like,
you're like, all right, that was good. Do you think that a lot of what has kind of pushed you to have that stance was that you miscarried at 17 and then were widowed at 19? Do you think that plays a role on your anger, if there is any, towards this benevolent being, and your disbelief that, why? And so, fuck you.
Essentially, yeah. I feel like that played a huge role in it, because I was taught from, I don't want to say a very young age, but 11, to that this is, God and Jesus and the Bible and all of these things. And then being 16, and I don't even want to say, because it being 16, like, falling in love with somebody, and then getting pregnant, and then all of a sudden losing that, and then going to get married, and then losing the person who I thought that I was going to spend the rest of my life with, and sitting at the cemetery being like, what the fuck, God? Like, are you serious right now? Like, they say that your life is planned out before you're born.
Yeah.
So at the time, being only 19 years old and being married less than 2 years, having a house and 2 cars and a dog and a full-time job, and literally,
you guys were grown folks at this point, the way
living
you were
my
living.
life. Yeah. I was 19 and he was 20. We owned everything that we had. Like, nothing. It was all ours, and it was everything for the most part, other than like hand me down furniture and stuff like that. Everything we worked hard.
Yeah.
We had dogs, and it was our own life. And I was only 19 years old. I was technically still a baby. Like, I was still a baby, because I look back now, my life now, I look at my 18-year-old cousin and I'm like, how the fuck was I married when I was 18? Like, I mean, yeah, we were in different places in our lives, her now and me then.
Yeah.
But still, age-wise, how the fuck was I married when I was 17 years old? I think about that. Like, how did my mom allow that? What was she thinking? Like, come on. Like, could you not have slapped me in the face and been like, calm down? Like,
Yeah.
No. But I kind of had presented an ultimatum to her, like, either you allow me to get married now and you can be there, or you don't approve and I get married in July, 3 months from now, and you won't be there. And she was not okay with not being there, so that's why she allowed it. And a lot of my family wasn't okay with it at the time, which I was just kind of like, whatever. Which is funny now, because when I think about it, because the one person that I can think of is my oldest cousin. She was not okay with it. Not okay. When you look back at the pictures, no smile. Like, not okay with me getting married at all, which is funny because my cousin, who's younger than me, was pregnant at the time. Oh, so you're not okay with me getting married, but you're okay with her being pregnant and having a baby. Like, okay.
Yeah.
But anyways, she was not okay with it at all. Like, after the fact, we talked about it, and she was like, yeah, no. Like, not that she hated him or whatever, but just because she knew him too, but not okay with it. And then what happens not 2 years later, when he unfortunately dies, she gets a tattoo of his name. Like, she loved him. So I'm just like, I told you. Like, we all did. Like, but no, I feel like going through such tragedy as a young age made me feel like, fuck you, God. Like, if you had this bullshit life set up for me, like, not bullshit life, because, I got dealt some shitty cards, but that at the time was the shittiest card. And I'm like, how could you do this? Like, you give me this person and then you just take it away from me. Yeah. Not only do you take the person away from me who I was supposed to spend my life with, but you take the kid that we had or we're gonna have.
Yeah.
So and
you take the house.
You take the house.
Take the dogs.
The dogs.
The cars. Because you were relying on his income.
Everything in my life changed. My whole life. I lost everything. Like, I literally almost had nothing to call my own. Like, I had nothing. Yeah. So, yeah, I felt that, how could he do that to me? So I almost like cursed him. Like, I'm done with you. Like, after that point, because in the sense of religion, Roger was a lot like you, in the sense that he was almost classified himself as an atheist at one point. But it was more like the don't believe, but I could potentially believe if you provide me with the evidence to support
agnostic.
Whatever. Yeah, I couldn't think of the word. Whatever it is that you're saying. So more scientific based. I need evidence. And so that's how he was. And so that's why I was first introduced to that type of life, I guess, was from him. So we didn't go to church as a couple. We didn't go to church. We went to church on like Mother's Day and like Christmas and Easter.
Yeah.
The major holidays that you go, mainly because my mom like kind of forced me to go. Otherwise I wouldn't have went. But that's the only time we ever would go. So we weren't religious at all as a couple. So then like when he died, it was tough because I had a very hard time not allowing because his mom wanted to have the pastor of the church that we had attended as children do the eulogy, like the basically sermon, do the service. And I was like, no, like no, like I'm the wife, I make the decisions. So I ended up choosing our youth pastor at the time, and he's a fantastic person. His family is great. They've been a part of my life for 20 years.
Yeah.
And still talk to them randomly here and there. But I had him do it, and they worked together. He was our youth pastor. But the point is, it turned me off. I was already kind of on the fence.
Yeah.
But that significant event in my life turned me away from the church, from religion. I was just kind of like, like, what is there for me here? Like, a maybe, like eternity and like goodness. Like, I don't know. And the only thing that would turn me back to religion is a guarantee, which can never in a gajillion years happen, is a guarantee that I will see my mom again. Mm-hmm. It's the only way that I'll go back.
Yeah.
Because at this point, what's the point? There's no point. That's how I feel.
Yeah. And, some will say was like, well, you've been through what you've been through and it's made you stronger. It's made you wiser, and which it has. You have no choice. What are you going to do? You either succumb to, your life and the trouble you've been through and just, crawl into a cave, or you have to rise above. So some people will just use that as, the given that's what's going to happen. But, that's why it was given to you. So that could happen. And it's like, there's other ways to,
right. To teach me a lesson or something. Exactly. Like, come on now.
There's other ways to do that. Yeah.
And it's almost like I've tried to ask specific questions to church people, and it's like, there's no answers. No. And so that's what gets me is there's no answers. And I'm not the kind of person that's just going to sit back on what ifs or this, I'm not okay with that. So losing Roger and my whole life, my dogs, my house, my cars, everything was the turning point in how I feel about religion at this point. And I still feel the same now, but losing Roger was a big moment in my life. Prior to that, we had met, when we were 11 or 12 or whatever, and he started going to my high school, and I don't even know how it happened, but we started dating, and we had been talking, passing notes back and forth to each other. And, we decided to start dating, and, everybody in the church knew we would sit next to each other. We didn't even see each other other than church days at first. And then he started coming to my house, and then I would go to his house and stuff like that. And I worked across the street at the mall at the time. And, we decided to go on a trip, to California. We went to the beach and whatnot. And, when we came back is when I found out that I was pregnant, and I went to I went to not the hospital, Planned Parenthood, and found out, got the tests, and, oh, you're this far along, whatever. But before I even had the opportunity to go to the hospital, I ended up starting to miscarry. So here I am, 17 years old in a hospital with him and my mom, and having a miscarriage. And so it was a rough time. But because people miscarry all the time, and it's tough for a lot of people because they feel connected. They, they're grieving. They lose something that they've potentially have always wanted.
Yeah. And there's some people that have been trying for a long time to do it, to get pregnant,
Right. And so not a lot of people know that about my history, is that we were pregnant. We told my mom, we told his mom, we told, several people knew. And so I hadn't had the opportunity to go see like a OBGYN, because I ended up miscarrying. So it's probably roughly, maybe between, I was like 8 weeks or so. So about 2 months.
Yeah.
And then ended up miscarrying, but I never felt a connection, to the pregnancy.
Yeah.
And a lot of it probably was because I never heard the heartbeat. Like I never felt connected. I never thought it was real.
Yeah.
Like I'm 17. Like
you're almost still trying to verify whether you are pregnant. You're still going through those steps.
Yeah. But I knew I was with the whole, like how the miscarriage went. Like,
Yeah.
How intense it was at that point, but I never felt connected. So I feel terrible when, when a woman miscarries at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks before all of that, like, I'm just like, but why are you so sad? Like, and it's not me being insensitive, because I'm not trying to be insensitive. It's almost like me saying, I just don't understand, because I didn't feel a connection to my pregnancy at that time.
Yeah.
Had I gone to the doctor or whatever, it would have been different. But
and had you been maybe in your early 30s, have been trying for a handful of years to get pregnant, and then you miscarry at that, then yeah. But when you're 16, 17, find out you're pregnant, you're just like, whoa, okay.
Yeah,
it's different.
Something not expected, but we ended up deciding that we were going to get married, and so we got married. So we decided that we were going to get married before I miscarried. And then I miscarried, and then we decided we were still going to get married. Mm-hmm. So we got married, small court wedding. My family was there. Everybody was there. His family was there. And bought a house and did all the stuff that you're supposed to do.
So I think we'll just touch on this first major life event that you experienced that we've kind of talked about a little bit. And then I think next episode we can get into you allowing yourself to reconnect with your biological father after he didn't recognize you in a grocery store. And then, of course, getting into the biggest moment of your life where you lost your mother, mm-hmm. Your pride and joy. But, I mean, take us through being 19 years old and losing your husband, the person you thought you'd spend the rest of your life with, and then just, your world turning upside down. Like, what was that, the evening before, that morning, and then when you get the call?
So I had recently, 2 months prior, started my new job. So I was new at a job. We lived very, very far, which is now considered Santan Valley.
Yeah.
Far. And I worked in Phoenix. So drive is pretty long. So I have to leave quite early. But the night before, we were watching American History X. Mm-hmm. I've never seen the movie before, but we watched that movie, and I knew that I had to get up early, so I decided to go to bed early so I didn't finish the rest of the movie. But I remember making something in the oven. It's probably I don't know, we're young and broke, so it's probably chicken nuggets or fish sticks or something, or baked chicken. I don't know. But I made something in the oven. I remember that. And so we eat dinner, clean up. We're watching the movie, we're on the couch watching the movie. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go to bed now. So he stayed up and watched the rest of the movie. I went to bed. I woke up. I got in the shower. I got dressed. I'm leaving. And I'm like, okay, I'm leaving. Hug, kiss, goodbye. And as I'm walking out of the door, or I said, okay, I love you, bye. And I'm leaving. And as I walk out of the door, he stops me. And he was like, hey, hey, babe, or whatever he said. I don't remember specifically. But it was you know that I love you, right? And I was like, yeah. Yeah. Like, okay, I gotta go. Like, so then I leave. I got my, 45-minute drive in because it's probably like 6 o'clock in the morning, like no traffic. So I drive into work and I get there, I'm there, and about 11:30 or so, I would safely assume, I get a phone call. I don't answer it. And then they call me again and I don't answer it because I'm at work. I'm 2 months into a job. I'm not just going to get up and answer my phone. So I don't answer. And then they call again. And so I'm like, okay, something's going on. Like, this is what happened. And so finally they leave a voicemail. And the voicemail said, "Hi, this message is for," at the time my last name was Tate, "Gabrielle Tate. This is the Pinal County Sheriff's Office. We need you to give us a call as soon as you can." And I'm like, oh shit, what happened? My dogs got out. Like, did they bite somebody? Like, somebody broke into my house. Like, I'm thinking all these things other than what happened. Mm-hmm. So, I didn't call back right away because I'm like, okay, I have to take a moment to figure out when I'm going to call back. But then I get a call from my mom's pastor, and I'm like, why the fuck is he calling me? And I don't recall if I answered or not. But anyways, I finally take my phone and I go into the break room. And in the break room, there were 2 people sitting in the break room as I'm taking this phone call. And I call back and I talk to this woman on the phone, and she goes, "Is this Gabrielle Tate?" And I was like, yeah, like, this is me. What's going on? Did my dogs get out? What happened?
Yeah.
And she goes, she was quiet for a second and she's like, is your husband Roger Tate? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, okay, are you sitting down? And I'm like, no, like, what is happening? Like, what is going on? And she's like, I'm going to need you to sit down. And I was like, I'm going to need you to tell me what happened. Like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And she was just like, well, she was quiet. And she's like, well, there was an accident this morning. And whenever you get told that, your first question is what? Are they okay? Mm-hmm. So she says there was an accident and Roger was involved. And my first question is he okay? And I swear to God, that it took her a whole minute to respond to me when I said, is he okay? Like, I swear to God, I was like, hello? Like, did you hang up on me? But then I said, is he okay? And she was quiet forever. And then all she said was, no. And then I said, where is he? I'm expecting that she's going to tell me he's at hospital, he's wherever. And she was quiet again. And then I said, where is he? And she said, at the Pima County Coroner's Office. And I was like, wait, what? And she's like, yeah, like, I'm sorry to tell you this over the phone, but he didn't make it. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, are you serious right now? So then I pretty much like collapsed. And then the 2 girls that were in there, I don't follow or talk to one of them, but the other I do. So they kind of were there with me. They sat with me, cried with me. But before I got the phone call, just kind of rewinding a little bit, it was probably about 8 o'clock in the morning, and I had called them because it was a Friday and it was Good Friday. So in March 2008, Easter was in March. I don't know if you remember that, but Easter was in March in 2008 because Good Friday was on March 21st, 2008. That was Good Friday. So people were off and I was upset that I had to work. So I was considering calling off. I was considering being like, I'm not going to go in, but I was 2 months into a new job. I couldn't call out. So I decided to go in. And that night, the night before, we had checked our mail and there was something in the mail that intrigued him. It was like a car, I don't know if it was a car dealership that was in, you know, like some sort of deal or whatever. It had like bright colors on it. Like it was something that he could do. Like I don't really know what it was, to be honest with you. I'd have to look back at the pictures, but I'm pretty sure it was some sort of deal on a car or cars at a dealership, or trade in this car and you get this or whatever, you know, like I don't know. But so I couldn't call out. And so it was Good Friday. I know that it was Good Friday. So a lot of people were off, you know, like whatever. And so so my last conversation with him, I called him in the morning because I knew, I don't think he worked. I think he was off that day because it was Good Friday. So I called him and I was like, hey, are you awake? How did the movie end? So he's talking to me about how the movie ended and everything that I missed and stuff. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm off at this time. I'll talk to you later, blah, blah, blah. Okay, I love you, bye. I love you too, bye. You know, like whatever. Just a normal conversation that you would have with your spouse. Like, what did I miss? Okay, great, thanks, bye. You know, I love you too, bye. So I'm pretty sure the conversation lasted less than 5 minutes, if that, you know, like it was just quick conversation. And then I get the phone call a little bit later after that. So they're consoling me in the break room. And I'm off the phone. I pull she tells me that I need to go to the Pinal County Sheriff's Department office. And I'm like, okay, like right now? So she was like, yeah. Like, so she kind of explained to me over the phone what happened. So what she said was, he was driving down, and this happened in Santan Valley. He's driving down Gary Road, where and people who know the area will know, it kind of curves around Schnepp Farms, and that he hit the curb and swerved and was hit like a T-bone. So I was like, okay. So I don't want to say calmly, but calmly, I gathered myself and I calmly walked to my boss's cubicle at the time. And people who I've talked to after the fact said that I was white as a ghost. Like I had no color in me. I had no facial expression. I had nothing. I literally just kind of like marched to his cubicle, and I don't remember his name at the time. I don't remember my boss's name, but he was in there with somebody in his cubicle. It's open, you know, whatever. Yeah. And I walked in there and I was like, I need to talk to you. And he was like I'm kind of like talking. No, I need to talk to you like right now. Like, and I turned around and walked away, and he was like, okay. Yeah. So then he followed me, and then I was like, and that's when I broke down, like cried. And I was like, okay, I gotta go. And so we had a boss, and then we had like a team lead at the time. So he was in there too. So I'm breaking down, telling them what's going on. And then I get a call. I had to call his parents. So I call his parents. And at the time that I was on the phone with his parents, Mesa PD was showing up at his parents' house to tell his parents, that, you know, that what happened. And from what I understand, the police went to my house to tell me, but nobody was home, and they didn't know where I worked. So they couldn't tell me like in person, which honestly, I feel like I would have hated that more if police showed up at my work to tell me that he died. I mean,
like, cause more of a scene.
Yeah. Like I think I wouldn't have been okay with that.
Yeah.
So I tell them what happened, and we're like, okay, we need to go. And I had a rental at the time for whatever reason. I don't even know why, but I had a rental at the time. So no tinted windows, nothing. And they're just like, okay, we need to go. So my boss was like, I'll drive, because, you know, clearly I can't drive. So he drives. The team lead is the passenger. And the girl who I will forever have a special place in my heart went with me. Like, I barely knew her, 2 months. And she's like, I'll go with you. And they literally carried me out of there. Like, carried me out of there and found my car, put me in the car, and we're sitting there, and I'm holding his picture, you know, like a picture of him from high school, you know, like whatever. I'm holding his picture, and I'm just like, I don't, is this real? Like, for real? So finally, I felt like forever in the car. So we pull up to the road, and they have us detour because they won't let us go through because of how serious the accident was. And so they tell them that they should let me, they knew who I was because of my name on my badge or my little thingy. Yeah. They knew who I was. So they knew that we were coming. So they made me get down, and I'm going to shout her out. Right. I don't know if she'll ever listen to this because I only follow her I was only friends with her on Facebook, and I don't have Facebook, but Tiffany was her name. Tiffany, she literally let me cry in her lap the whole drive. And she caressed my hair. She comforted me. She hugged me. She was there. Like in that moment, that was her. She was there. She cried with me. Like she barely knew me for 2 months. And here she is being this amazing person to be with me. Mm. And of course, my boss at the time and the team lead were there. They drove and whatnot. So I have to put my head down so I don't see the accident. We pull around. We finally get to the place. And in between there, I had called my mom. I had done what I needed to do or whatever. And I called his boss at the time, which turns out was our youth pastor, mm-hmm. who did the eulogy at his funeral. So I called him, and we all pretty much met at the same time. We get there at the same time. And we get there. It's a small little baby ass police station in Pinal County. Like it's mm-hmm. small. And so I walk in and I tell them who I am. And I'm like, you have to be kidding. Like this can't be real. Yeah. And then she hands me his phone and his wallet. And I'm like, okay, this is real. Like this is really real. And then so I'm crying, and you know, they're all in there with me. Like my boss, my youth pastor, my mom, they're all in there. So they're listening to everything that's being said. And so she's telling me what they thought happened at the time. Yeah. So whatever, it ended up turning out to be a lot different than what she had explained. But mm-hmm. either way, we're all done there. We leave, we go home. My mom, they take me home, and I couldn't even go inside. Like I couldn't go inside
to your house,
into my own home. Yeah. Because the last person that was there was him. He was there and he left, and then he's never going to come home. So I couldn't even go inside. And then finally I go inside and I go to my room, and before I know it, I swear to God, it was probably within an hour, maybe, I come out or I hear people. My whole family is there. My whole family. Literally calls were made and people showed up. Like that's the fucking kind of family I have. Like they are there when you need them. Calls were made, and it was just like a twinkle of the nose, like instantly. Like I lived far at the time, and they were there. Like boom, there. Like then they took care of everything. Like my cousins walked my dogs. They were cleaning my house. They were making sure that everything was done. Like they were doing everything, like cleaning up my yard and picking up dog poop. And like they were taking care of things that I couldn't do because I was mentally absent, you know? Mm-hmm. And I remember I couldn't get out of bed. My cousins and my tias, and they were all in my bed with me crying, you know, like I remember all of that. And being in the bathroom, being like, Mom, I'm going to go take a shower. And my mom, cause you know, in a master bedroom, the bathroom is attached, right? So I would go into the bathroom to go take a shower. My mom wouldn't leave the room while I was taking a shower mm-hmm. because she's like, I don't know what's going to happen in there. Yeah. So I'm going to sit right here and I'm going to wait. And I wouldn't even be taking a shower. I'd be sitting out crying. Yeah. Because I couldn't do anything. And then she'd be like, you get in there? Like do it. Or other times she would even sit in the bathroom with me while I was taking a shower because she was like, I don't know where you're at mentally right now because you don't want to talk. Yeah. And I didn't eat for a whole week. They tried to feed me. I remember them making me food. I remember a plate of a sandwich and Cheeto Puffs and Gatorade in front of me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't eat it because I'm like, I can't eat. A whole week I didn't eat. And then of course that week is kind of a blur. Yeah. The next thing I remember is the funeral, planning the funeral. Planning it, seeing him before they dressed him all up and stuff like that. And the actual funeral itself, I remember the people talking, seeing people in and out. Everybody was just kind of, it was a blur to me. So when I look back at the photos, I'm just like, I remember that, but I don't remember that. Yeah. Like, who knows? And then the one thing that stands out about Roger's funeral was people talk. People go up and they say, you know, like, what their memory of Roger was. So his sister went up, his dad talked, I talked clearly. And then guess who goes up and talks at the very end or close to the very end? My biological dad. And my mom was so fucking irritated. She was just like, who the fuck is he to think that he knew him well enough to go talk about him? Like,
yeah.
I think Roger met him a handful of times. He didn't know him. So it pissed me the fuck off for him to go up and talk about him, because it's like, you're no.
Yeah.
So I remember that. And then I remember so we did all of that and go to the service and go to the cemetery. And I remember telling my dad that I was going to get into the grave with him. And my dad did not leave my side the whole time. Like, he had his arm wrapped in my arm. Like, you are not fucking leaving my side right now. Like, do you need to go pee? Cause I'm gonna stand outside. Like,
yeah.
he was that close to me, like, the whole time. And, got through the reception, was able to, talk to people and laugh about the funny moments and cry about the sad moments and do all of that. And then I remember on the drive home, my dad was driving my black Ford Focus, when you had to do the windows like this, like my oldest car.
Yeah.
My mom's in the passenger seat and I'm in the back. It's just us. And we're driving and we're getting close to my house, and there's a McDonald's close to my house. And I'm like, Dad, can you pull over into the McDonald's? And he was like, yes, what do you want? And I was like, I just want some chicken nuggets. So the first thing that I ate after Roger died was chicken nuggets. Like, I remember that, like that was the first thing that I ate after that. But going into kind of this next part of what we're going to talk about, my mom was there for every crying moment. I woke up on more than one occasion in my closet next to his shoes crying. And she was right there. She held me like a baby when I cried.
Yeah.
And she cried because she's like, how do I take this away from you? How do I make it better? So she cried because she's like, this is my baby and you're hurting this badly. What can I do to help you? And clearly there was nothing that she could do, but her being there helped. And my family being there helped. So it's like, it just helped me be able to cope with other things that happened in my life.
Yeah.
Was just my mom's presence, my mom's like angelic presence, helped me. So, that happened when I was 19. So March of 2008, is when that happened. So yeah, that was, pretty intense.
Yeah. To say the least. To say the least. Yeah. I recall that you would visit his grave every day.
For a whole year. Every single day. Rain or shine.
Yeah, and you got familiar with other people that would go and visit.
Who were buried after. I got familiar with some parents who were burying their children. I sat there and read, wrote, cried. And that's where I kind of felt like I cursed God the most.
Yeah.
When I was at the cemetery. I got to be able to essentially kind of start to find myself in that year towards the end. Like, who am I without him?
Yeah.
And that's what I needed to do. And my mom would go, like, people would show up, like, and be there with me, support me and stuff. And it was like, for a whole year I went there and I was there.
And you had got a double plot. Is that what it's referred to?
Yeah. So I did at the time, being 19, I thought my life was over. Like, oh my God, I'm never going to get married again, have kids, like just live a full life. So I got what is considered a double plot. So a double plot is they bury 9 feet deep instead of 6 feet deep. So then the top person can be 6 feet and then the bottom person is 9. So I got that, expecting that was going to be where I'm going to go. But it's not where I'm going to go. So I got that, and it took what, 11 years, 10 years?
Just about, yeah, right around there.
For us to get his plaque, which you actively participated in. So I
Well,
appreciate
I told
that.
you, like one of the at first few times we went to visit, like, yeah, like what can we do to get one? And yeah, it took us, 4 or 5 years from that, but still we got him a plaque.
And it was, and that's when I kind of felt like that you were special, is because I took you there pretty early, like, cause you knew my history, and I know that I took you there early. So for you to be like, okay with going, like it meant a lot to me, like that you were there, that you came with me to visit, to talk and to be like, okay, like whatever. Like obviously you never knew him or never knew what he was like, but
it was a major part of your life, and it formed who I knew. So it's like, it's almost inconsiderate, or like,
it's almost like I feel like you
Not to go.
leaving, you're just kind of like, I got her, don't worry, like she's okay. Like that, like you visiting is just you being like, I got her, like don't worry, like almost is what you would tell my mom, like I'll take care of her, don't worry about it. Like, I mean, worry, but don't worry, So I visited every day for a year. I journaled. And more often than not, I always saw a butterfly. In every situation that I was in, I always saw a butterfly. That first year at the cemetery, always a butterfly. I remember when I was driving back from Santan Valley into the city, and I hit a barrier, like some barrier on the street, like the construction cones or whatever, and my car stalled. And my car stalled for a stupid reason. There was some sensor on the side that was hit. All you had to do was hit the sensor. They're good. But I ended up having to get my car towed because I'm stupid. I didn't know that there was a stupid sensor.
I wouldn't know that.
So during the time that I'm waiting for like AAA to come get me, there's a freaking butterfly like flying around me. And I was just like, what the fuck? Like, are you serious right now? You're going to fly around me and watch me go through this bullshit when it's like for real? And so after a certain amount of time, I was able to make light of like my feelings towards it. Like the whole butterfly thing, which is why I have a butterfly tattoo, because instead of waiting to see a butterfly, now I always have a butterfly with me, because that's him showing himself to me. Like, okay, this is me. I'm here. I'm watching you. Like, I got you. Don't worry about it. Like, whatever. And then just turning into something funny, like cruel jokes. Like, I'm by myself with 2 dogs. And there was one night at 2 a.m. when my freaking smoke alarms were going off. And I'm like, are you fucking serious right now? I don't know. I had vaulted ceilings. How do I fucking reach these things? Like, I don't know. So I had to get some chairs and some pillows and stand on the ledge and like awkwardly reach up to my smoke detectors to pull them off. And I pull it off of the thing. It's like wiring and stuff. Pull it off. And I take the batteries out. And that motherfucker is still going off. And I was like, what the fuck? Like, are you serious? This thing is still going off? And so my awkward ass gets into my car, goes across the street to the fire station. And I knock on the door and they're like, oh my God, like it's an emergency. And I'm like, my smoke detectors are going off. Like I'm all like old lady like in like a coat and stuff. And I was like, my smoke detectors are going off. I changed the batteries, but I don't know what's going on. And they're like, okay, well, they looked at it and they're like, it's a little dusty, like whatever. And so they're like, we'll come back tomorrow and we'll look at it. We'll install, like, I'll look at it. The guy said, I'll come back and I'll look at it. And I was like, cool. So next thing you know, the next day, some big ass fire truck rolls down my street, parks in front of my house, and like 5 firefighters get out and they come in my house and they're like, okay, like they fixed everything for me. But I come to find out that same night, his mom's smoke detectors were going off.
Really?
And I was like, this motherfucker's playing jokes on us. Like a jokester till the end. But we all miss him. We all loved him dearly. So that was the, I don't know, first major loss in my life. So we can pen the rest till the next time.
Yeah, we'll touch on that because that experience definitely prepared you for, the big one down the way.
The future one.
The futura. So, okay. Well, let's cap it right there and we'll pick it up again soon.
Thanks for listening. All the way.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, though.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you for being vulnerable.
Yeah.
All right. Bye.
Hasta.